Welcome to the Eltropy Exchange podcast, where leaders of community financial institutions connect, learn, and stay ahead. In each episode, we sit down with industry executives, innovators, and experts for candid conversations about the challenges and opportunities shaping CFIs today. At Eltropy, we believe conversations matter. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Eltropy Exchange podcast. My name is Michael Pupil, Vice President at Eltropy, and I am thrilled today to bring on our next guest. So welcome to all our viewers, morning, noon, and night. Today, I get the pleasure of introducing our guest, Lone Jensen, who is the Chief Member Experience Officer at Alltru Credit Union. Lone, thank you so much for joining. It has been a pleasure. We've had a lot of fun conversations. We actually got to see each other recently in Wyoming. So thank you for carving out some time today for the podcast.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Awesome. I'm going to do a little introduction of yourself, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. And so for those listening, those watching, Lone Jensen is a seasoned executive with extensive experience in the banking and credit union industry with a strong focus on enhancing member satisfaction, where she serves today as the Chief Member Experience Officer at Alltru Credit Union. Lone has successfully implemented strategies that streamline the member journey and foster loyalty. Her background in leadership roles across various financial institutions have equipped her with a deep understanding of operational excellence and customer service. Lone is passionate about financial education and community engagement, actively seeking innovative solutions to help improve the service delivery. She has a proven track record in managing cross-functional teams and driving strategic initiatives. Her commitment to professional development is evident through her involvement in leadership programs where she helps cultivate future leaders in the community. Her analytical skills and problem-solving abilities make her a valuable asset in any organization outside of work, and Lone enjoys mentoring emerging leaders and participating in community service initiatives. And I can tell you from personal experience, she is also one of the sweetest people that you will ever encounter. And so, Lone, thank you again for joining us. I know that that's the official biography, but I think over the next 45, 60 minutes, those that are listening, watching, and seeing this are going to come to know you far more personal than the biography that you sent over. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great being here. And Michael, it's good seeing you again.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I always start this podcast with one way, and you have a very unique, what makes me most excited about this is you come with a very unique background. Your career started in a different context than every other podcast guest that we've had by growing up in Denmark. And so I'm going to start the podcast here today. How did you get started in the credit union industry, more specifically, and what led you stay into the United States? Because you've been here for a while. So kick us off.
I have been here for a while. Yes, I did grow up in Denmark. You can probably tell I still have that accent. Even though it's been a long time, it's stuck, I think. But I grew up in Denmark. My family still lives there. Interesting enough, credit unions back at that time were also common. Sadly, they're not anymore. They have merged and they're really at least in Denmark, there aren't any credit unions left. So very sad. But my path coming to this country definitely was not planned. I would say I was young and dumb probably, but I had a very, very independent mindset and I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience living in another country. I will say languages and cultures, I was always very curious and interested about learning more about that. So at least taking a break from school and seeing another country, that was really what I wanted to do. But I didn't think America was going to be my forever home. But of course, destiny proved otherwise. And I'm very glad that it did. I have, 2 grown daughters. They're the love of my life. And I get to work at a place where I feel valued and where I can make a difference. And that's a lot to be thankful for. So, but how did I get into the credit industry? I don't want to bore the listeners too much, but I needed a job. I just needed a job. I was young and I was looking in the newspaper. I know people are going to laugh because, yes, I'm that old. We actually had newspapers back then. There's no internet. Uh, and I found a teller job at a check cashing store because it didn't require cash hand. I remember this so very clear. it didn't require cash handling experience, which I didn't have. And some of the jobs at banks and credit unions required 1 year cash handling experience. And I was kind of a rule follower. I'm like, okay, if it says I have to have that, I have to have it. So I applied at a check cashing store. And boy, that was exciting. But yeah, I think the first day we had somebody handcuffed in the lobby, and it was like detective work every day. But I stuck with it for a year because that's what you needed to move on. So after I worked there for a year, I then looked back and I asked one of the ladies I worked with, and I said, "What's the difference between a bank and a credit union?" Because she also worked at a bank part time. She said, "I don't really know, but I heard credit unions pay more." So I applied at credit union. And that was over 30 years ago, over 30 plus years ago. Um, I had plans on, I was going to study international business as I knew several languages, and I thought that would be a really good career path. But I ended up staying with my first credit union for 18 years. I was given so many opportunities to learn and grow. I was very thankful for that. Um, and then, yeah, I've stayed with credit unions. I did have a short leap of working at a bank for a couple of years. But I came back to the credit unions because it always gave me a sense of community. And
Yeah.
because I found that I really enjoyed the coaching and leading people and seeing them grow. I never thought I would be in banking because it honestly sounded not very exciting to me. But when I kind of learned what it's so much more than that, right? It's leading people, it's helping other people. And when you combine those two things that I value, making a difference in people's lives and being part of something bigger than myself, um, that's really what drives me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the personal side of things is where our conversation kicked off for the initial introduction to joining the podcast. I think your international work also provides a very unique experience that not everybody has. What is funny to me, and maybe this is just how we all find our way through life, is that almost every single person has found their career and longevity in the credit union space by accident, not by design. And I think that is what is remarkable about this industry, that every person who unexpectedly finds their way into a credit union realizes how valuable and how great the industry is, and then it becomes a lifelong dedication, which is evident with what you have. You started the podcast mentioning that Denmark once upon a time had a very significant credit union industry, and now it is gone. So cautionary tale, 30 years ago, there were roughly about 22, maybe 21,000 credit unions in the industry 30 years ago, maybe a little bit more. Today, there are just under 4,500, and those numbers are shrinking, not growing. And so maybe cautionary tale. And Lona, I'd love to, pick your brain onto this because I think you have an excellent balance of both the technology and the humanity side of things. And in this podcast together, I think that's what we're going to marry. And so, I'd love to get, before we jump into, some of the initiatives at Alltru and what you're tackling, the international experience does give you a different perspective, in my opinion. What are some of the viewpoints that you think you bring in, certainly to Alltru, and does that change how you approach challenges? Do you feel like it gives you a different leadership style or a different viewpoint or a different influence? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Or is it really that, after 30 years in the US, it's more similar than different? I'd love to get your perspective because having never lived in Denmark,
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. I would say, and I think I also learned that from even just kind of exploring my own background. We did have a consultant that we worked with a while back, teaching us about cultural intelligence. And I was reading a book about just worldviews, and it really did give me perspective and realized, yes, my upbringing and my background does make a difference in the way I look at things. So it was very interesting. But um, the I would say growing up in Denmark, though, really the collaboration and equality are cultural norms, and I think it is the norm that to value every voice at the table. Um, and I think that does show up in how I lead. I work really hard to listen very deeply and believe in transparency. And also, that trust builds stronger teams. I don't know if that is maybe not that unique. That's to me, that's the right thing to do. But I've always felt sometimes a little bit of an outsider, right? An outsider looking in at times, because those early childhood and growing up experience that you have does go with you, even though I lived here for a very long time. But I do think it helps me at times to challenge the status quo. I don't assume that, obviously this is just how things are done. And I strive to always have a very curious mindset, which has helped me overcome challenges, small and great. So obviously experience, it comes with experience, but I do think I have brought a different perspective to our leadership with my upbringing and growing up in another country.
Yeah. And look, the focus of, what you're saying and the current role that you have today as the Chief Member Experience Officer, I feel like that curiosity or that perspective gives you an advantage because you're constantly looking at improvement, right? It's never a set and forget. In that vein, I'd love to highlight, some of the innovations or some of the things that you're doing to champion innovation within Alltru Credit Union to drive that member employee experience. In some of our pre-calls, you were talking a little bit about launching an internal knowledge base at Alltru, and where innovation really has to start is within our own team. Before we can go external, we have to get internal, up to date. Could you talk a little bit about the insights of this internal knowledge base? What drove the initiative? What is the initiative? What you're expecting that impact to be for the employees? And ultimately, how will that serve the members?
Yeah. Actually very excited about this initiative, and we've had it on our roadmap for several years. So it wasn't, it's something we have nurtured and planned for several years.
Yeah.
It starts with, I mean, having a strong knowledge base. You have to have the information, so you got to have good procedures and policies that are up to date. So we actually spent years on making sure that we were ready for this, and then also budgeting, and being prepared for that. But really, what it came down to is that I want to make sure our employees have the right tools and it's easy for them to provide good service to our members. And our employees they're spending too much time searching for answers instead of, being able to help our members efficiently. So I
Yeah.
wanted to really remove obviously that friction. So if staff can get the information quickly, they can be more confident. I think that's so important, right? Especially as you have turnover in a lot of those frontline position. You got to make sure they're confident, and then they can shift that focus on being, creating that positive member experience, having, the answers at your fingertips. It really, I'm hoping the result will be that we should improve speed and accuracy and the consistency in how we provide service to our members. And it's also how we support one another, because you're only as good externally to your members as we are internally. So we only actually just a month in since we launched the internal knowledge base, but in just those few weeks, I thought this was interesting as we pulled the results. We've already had a 98% deflection rate. And what that means is that's the rate at which questions are answered successfully. So we've did a lot of testing, obviously. There's a lot of risk when you make changes like this if you don't do it right. But that deflection rate is even increasing as we speak. And we started off, we've had in those 2 weeks, or probably 3 weeks now, 100 out of 139 employees that are using it, actively using the chatbot, which we named
Und-
Allie, by the way. Oh, yeah, yes. She has a
I
name.
mean, that's an incredible statistic. I have to just dig into that. I mean, a 98% deflection rate. So of 100 questions now, what you're saying is employees are able to get 98 out of those 100 on their own through this system that allows them to help service the members faster, makes them more confident that they have the information at their fingertips. I mean, that is not just a big impact. I mean, that is a colossal impact. And if you're mentioning that it's increasing, I mean, there's only 2 more percentage points to go. This is an incredible outcome in such a short period of time. How do you balance the push for technology. Now, you mentioned that you've prepared for this for a number of years by updating your SOPs, updating your documentation, so that the internal knowledge base can pull the right information and put it where it needs to be. But maybe you can talk a little bit more broadly about balancing new technology and these type of experiences, and if there are more examples to talk about this containment rate or this deflection rate. I'd love to unpack that. Full disclosure for everyone, that's the first time I've heard this. That was not planned. This is wildly exciting for you guys. I mean, that's
Yes.
a tremendous amount of time recouped.
Right. And we have a group of administrators, and each department are responsible for updating.
Updating.
There's a great tool, and it's very easy. If the answer is not correct, the front end user can create a ticket within the system. Very easy to use. But again, I think the amount of testing that we did and the behind the scenes, and I'm not one of the administrators, but I know our team worked so hard on it. They worked very well together. It's a cross-functional team. I will say we are a smaller credit union, right? We have 130 employees, so we don't have one person that can just be allocated to update the knowledge base or update procedures. So I think though the way we did it and the way we organized and planned for it has made it successful. But I will say I am surprised that the rate is as high as it is. But I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier. I think this is just the first step, right? Um,
Yeah.
but our next phase, we also want to implement a knowledge base for our members, and so we're actually testing that right now. I think that one is going to be a little different. It's not as comprehensive as the internal, of course, because members cannot have access to all our information. But it supports our digital first strategy of self-service. So,
Yeah.
the chatbot, and I know a lot of businesses and companies have chatbots, but we also know that if it's not accurate and if it's not, it can be very frustrating. I know I've given up on many chatbots that weren't really helpful. So it's going to be extremely important that I think that one, I mean, we have to test and test again, but not only that, I think that's going to be maybe a little bit more work than we anticipated because we never had that before. We haven't had a knowledge base like that. So, but I think it's a good start for us. And it will be, it is, we want us to be we want our members, I should say it this way, we want them to be able to self-service when they want to, right? But it's very important that they have easy access to a human. So the answer they get from the chatbot, if we cannot provide all the information, it's going to have to be very easy to connect with a video banker or the call center. So we have already made sure that some of those quick links are incorporated into that chatbot. But it's exciting. It's new to us, and I think paired with the internal knowledge base, I really hope we can ramp up, the expectations and service levels to our members.
Yeah. And you mentioned your chatbot is named Ali. I feel like there's a story behind the name of that chatbot or the name behind that technology. Do you happen to know what it is?
Well, we actually had a little, we had a voting, our employees voted on it. And we have the external chatbot. Her name is going to be Trudy. And so it's Trudy and Allie, but our name is Alltru Credit Union. So it kind of plays with Alltru a little bit. But yeah, I think it's pretty
I
fun.
love it. I felt like there was a story behind that. I love it. So Trudy and Allie, when depending if it's internal or external,
Yeah.
the two ladies are leading the way. I love that idea. I think it also plays really well in terms of like the commitment in the employees and helping them be stronger. Like you mentioned, makes the team more confident, right? The idea is first point of resolution or as quickly a resolution as possible so that we can move on to the next piece. Leveraging technology absolutely does that so that you provide that member with a greater experience. And like you said, when a member wants to self-serve, they have the ability in a very easy method. When they want to have a deeper relationship or have a deeper conversation, they should absolutely get the ability to do so without having to jump through many hurdles. Right? And kind of, the balance between the transactional and the strategic. I feel like that is fundamental for maintaining the member experience over a course of time. Like, let me do what I want, when I want, how I want, and support me as a partner. Is that the mentality or the strategy behind that?
Right. I mean, I'm sure you can agree with me that technology should remove barriers and not add them, right? And I always ask, does this make it life easier for members, but also employees, members and employees? You're not going to do well without the other. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, then we really have to rethink about it. And so for us, the balance really comes from testing and planning solutions that has to provide a positive ROI, right? We got to stay in business. We have to continue to grow, and measuring the impact before and after the implementation. I know we talked about that a little bit when we had met a month ago, but we also have to be okay with saying no to some of those shiny tools that are out there that don't really deliver values. We have to be really careful of resources as credit unions. And I would say we have not done a great job of looking at the sometimes measuring success of each project after the fact. We've done a fantastic job implementing many tools and solutions over the years, especially being a small credit union. But this next coming year, we are going to slow down a little bit. It's going to be a busy year, but we are not going to implement as many new projects as we have done in the past. But instead, we're going to do a deep dive into profitability and efficiency. It might not sound really exciting for some, but it's really, really important that we do that. And looking at actual ROI after the fact, and looking at the adoption success rates. How well have we done that? So we really like to go back and look at some of the bigger projects and ensuring that they implemented the way it should have been, and are this as successful as we hope for.
Expected. Yeah. Or what you were told was going to be. I mean, I, I guess coming from my perspective, it's actually the post-implementation data that is always the most fascinating to mine. That's why I reacted the way that I did when you told me that the deflection rate was 98%, because that's a post-implementation, metric. And so it's great when we're talking about various solutions and what the potential impact could be. Or can you tell me what the impact would be with a credit union my size or in my state or with a similar seg, or like kind of the comparison where it's more theoretical than it is practical. For me, the most exciting part is the actual, right? And it's now that we turn something on, is it different? And the biggest struggle with that is people's willingness for change. I think change makes everybody a little bit uneasy because you're used to doing what it is that you're doing. You've trained, you've learned how to do it. And now you're making me do something different, which could mean that I do it incorrectly. And nobody ever wants to make a mistake. But when you start to see progress, or you're able to quantify it for sure in the method of an ROI, it gives the executive leadership team, more confidence to commit to change, or change with purpose, for the betterment of either member experience, the employees as a whole, or growth of the credit union. Um, Wildly interesting. And Luna, I can't wait to have more conversations with you as you gather the data. I think 2026 is going to be very, very interesting, and I'd love to be part of that journey with you.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
I-
and one of the things that I mentioned about some of the things we're good at, things we're not so good at, but change management as an organization, and actually have a change management strategy is something I'm really passionate about, and I really want to implement that next year and create roadmaps that will really help us with change management and projects in the future. So yeah, I would love to share more about that. But yeah.
You may be a repeat guest on the podcast then in 2026. I can't tell you how many times I talk to a credit union and they're looking at various technologies, and Eltropy aside, just, everybody looks at whatever it is that they do, and everybody has to put together a business plan, what they feel is going to be the impact. Can they prove it? Can they measure it? What is the metric of success? I think what you are creating, is a topic of conversation that happens very often, where not everybody has that template or that roadmap that you're talking about. I would love to go down that. Speaking of technology and roadmap and presence, we've spent a little bit of time talking about the internal change, but I'd love to understand how you leverage technology and presence with the commitment to the community, right? And so now that you invest in some of these technologies internally, how does that shape the commitment to the membership, the seg, and the community that you guys serve today?
Yeah. So yeah, Alltru, we are a CDFI credit union. So that means, we have a very strong commitment to our community. But it's not just because it's not just checking a box, right? It's really about, aligning those efforts to where they really matters. And we ask, and we're very intentional about this. Will this program remove barriers? We want to be accessible um, for our members in the communities, and will it build financial confidence? And so the impact means goes beyond measuring whether the lives of our members are actually improving. We're focused on meeting the greatest needs of our areas, and we've identified what those are. It's education, it's job training, and sustainable housing. So if an initiative doesn't support one of the three, we may or may not, we may not, invest a lot of effort into it, because you have to be very
Yeah.
intentional with your support and your time and money, right? Um,
Yeah.
have one thing I'm proud of it that we've done. We've created a CDFI Advisory Board, and each quarter we report on the community impact, right? So we have an annual plan. We have a 3-year plan for our CDF Advisory Board. And in fact, we actually had our yearly planning session last night and reviewed the impact report. So I don't know if you want to hear about that, but
Oh, if you're able to share any insights,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it was very exciting, because it's great when you set goals, right, and you stretch a little bit, and you're not sure you can get there, and then you get there. It's a celebration, right? But we measure the dollars of loans that are deployed, to members with a credit score that's less than 659. And so
Hmm.
last year we deployed a little over 3,000 loans for about almost $70 million, and that was almost six very specific. Now it's fresh in my mind, right? 63.86% of our total portfolio. And that's very exciting for us, because that was a goal we had set and we had not reached in previous years. And now we're getting there. And this year we're on track to even exceed that goal as well. So, and for the listeners out there, if you're not a CDFI certified credit union, to get that certification, it does require you that 60% of your transactions are generated related to loans is generated in a CDFI census tract. So that's why that's a very important component if we want to maintain that certification.
Absolutely. Now, what do you attribute the progress, the growth? What was the mechanism that really drove that? If in years past you failed to meet the target, now all of a sudden you have, what changed?
Yeah, it's years of trial and error to a certain degree, but we, over the past, I think it was 3 years ago, we really committed to having full-time business development employees. We actually call them financial empowerment coordinators, because they are out in the communities and they are promoting services and solutions for employers. And it's about empowering people in the community. So they're empowerment coordinators. We also have a business development manager. I know some credit unions have like full teams, but for us, it was a really big step to have 2 full-time coordinators and a business development manager. And then along with that, we also created a position, an area market manager, and she oversees the branches. We have 5 branches, but she also has a growth goal that includes business development in our communities. So those teams work very close together. So I think it's a combination. There's many other things we've done over the years, but that in particular is a very strong team. And we've really seen our vision of business development come to fruition. And so it has to do with that, but also developing partnerships and programs. It takes time. We created a very unique product. It's called a salary advanced loans, and it's only offered to the employees of businesses. So it is almost like a payday loan, a promise to pay. But that has definitely attracted a lot of businesses to help their employees with their short-term needs for emergency loans. It's just a small tool in a toolbox. It's not a one all be all, but it's about being able to adapt and working with businesses and their employees with what they truly need, right?
You have no idea how excited this makes me. And if anybody has listened to this podcast before, you know that I normally take a shot at the payday lenders because of the rate of return that they have. And I know that there are some states, some counties and cities that kind of put limits on the payday lenders because some of those rates are absolutely predatory. So hearing, a credit union try to go into the space of quick funding or emergency funding, micro loan funding, without the predatory nature of the rates that you have now. I imagine that they might be a little higher than the traditional ones because they're faster in and out, a little more risk because they're unsecured, but like that, no, they're pretty accurate. I love that you guys are doing this. I love it. And how long has this been running at Alltru? Have you guys been doing this? Yeah.
We started as a pilot internally for our own employees about 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half. So this is the first. This is just this year we have deployed it. I think we have a handful of businesses that we have partnered with, but it is unique. And to your point, though, don't quote me on the rate, but our rate, the highest may be like 15%, you know? So it's very reasonable, and then all the repayment is done through their payroll. So it takes out the guesswork. So it is unique, and it really depends on the HR department and how willing they are to want to help their employees and do that. But so far, we've had quite a bit of excitement around that program.
I love that. And for those listening, Lona, you've always been so kind with your time. I'm sure, a few people will seek you out on LinkedIn and send some messages.
Oh,
I think that this is wildly exciting and something that I've been championing at many conferences when I jump on stage. The statistics that I normally give is 30 years ago, 23,000 credit unions. Today, there's just under 4,500. But if you look at payday lenders, there were only about 2,500 payday lenders about 30 years ago. Today, there's more than 23,000 locations across the United States. It's a complete inverse
wow.
of the market, and none of them are offering it at 15%. Even if that's a little bit high, a little bit low, no one's even close to that number. It's normally double, triple as a minimum, and then it goes to a rate that I truly believe should be criminal. But that's my soap that I get on. I'm still waiting for my angry letters from the payday lenders in the industry.
That's amazing, though. I didn't realize they had grown at that rate. That's insane.
Everybody can fact check me and blow me up on social and send me messages, but I may be off by a little bit of a percentage, but it's around those numbers, 23,000 payday lenders across the board. And there may be 4,500 credit unions. I think there's about 4,300 today. It depends on, what the assets under management that we're doing. But 30 years ago, it's a complete shift in piece. It's wild. Now, with one thing that they do really well, and I know that this was also another strategic initiative that you guys had, was payments as a whole. And payments as a topic for credit unions have become probably in the top 3. I think fraud has certainly been at the top of the list over the last couple of years. Payments is, right there. If it's not 1A or 1B or 2A or 2B, wherever it is, Alltru has, attempted to modernize its payment systems, right? And you guys have recognized that as a crucial step towards improving the member experience, reducing costs, remaining competitive. Can you talk a little bit about that initiative as well? And I imagine that these are very closely related to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, we are looking at our current process. We find it to be a little slow and I would also say very costly more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's lacking flexibility for what we need. We all know members have the expectations have changed, right? The money movement has to be quick and easy and safe. And we really need to just look at a much more robust solution for us and for our members. Um, and we have engaged with several different vendors and solutions, making sure, that we are doing, because we all know how much work it is and how much time and effort in making a change. So we want to make sure it's the right partner. So I'm excited about that. I'm also a little bit nervous about it. It's a big one, right? And it's in the past we've spent a lot of time just getting to where been wanting to be for probably 5 years ago, and we finally get there, and it's just not fast enough. It's just not. So it's really important to have the right vendor that can work with us at the speed of our industry, because I feel like we're already a little behind. I mean, we do have some solid solutions, but not nearly to the point where, again, if it's a drain on the cooperative and we're losing money, if it can be at least a wash, and it doesn't have to
Break even.
generate income necessarily, but if we're losing money day in and day out, there are other options for us.
Oh,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
I think you hit the nail right on the head. These devices that we run around with, if it is not instant, most people lose interest really fast. And as the generations get younger, no knock to younger generations, it's just speed tends to be the ultimate prize in everything. And the perfect example are those payday lenders. The reason for the proliferation is just ease of use, and I'm willing to pay for it. In fact, I was on a call earlier this morning where we were having a similar conversation, and somebody used the example of Uber Eats. And they said, that sometimes there's a $5 fee, a $7 fee, a $10 fee in order to get it. And basically what we're promoting is laziness at a cost. And, I sheepishly put my head down and I opened my app, and I had ordered dinner last night through Uber Eats and paid, a much higher price than I could have. And the person that I was also on the line with, a colleague of mine at Eltropy, lives about a 5-minute drive from where I live. And he started laughing and he said, "Mike, that's about a 5-minute walk from your place." And so I am just as guilty of it as everybody, but I think the addiction is just ease of use, and maybe it is a little bit of laziness. I was pretty tired yesterday. I just did not feel like cooking. I think we've all had those days. But when it comes to financial, services, ease of use is exactly what you want, right? If you're applying for a loan, speed to origination is the most important piece. I want to get my car. I want to get my loan. I may be in need of emergency funding. On the collection side, the emotional state is normally a more negative one. And so it's more about embarrassment. And so if I can stay anonymous behind, technology, maybe that goes a long way. Ultimately, it leads to your funnel, which is the member experience, regardless of the side of the coin that they sit on. And so I guess is the idea to kind of leapfrog the credit union into offering something that is next generation, or do you feel like this is a need because you're a little bit slower with the times and you're trying to compete with all these different wallets that are out there, like the Chimes and the 700 different wallets that everybody has money in?
yeah. And we are building a foundation too. So in addition to looking at a new, potentially different bill pay vendor and payment provider, we're also looking at faster payments and FedNow and RTP. And we
Mhm.
are actually kicking off a project later this month to implement those two tools. So we are starting very conservative. So we are just receiving payments is how we're going to start with FedNow and RTP for the instant payments. Um, but again, it's a need, and we can't lag behind. I think the relevance, is now, and that's just one piece of the puzzle. I don't know necessarily how the effect on the member. I mean, obviously, they're going to see the deposits faster if their financial institution offer the same rails. It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky business, but I think that's at least a foundation to begin with. So that's one piece that we will be working on this month, actually.
Love it, because I think with the business development team trying to bring in, new members that have access to financial services that they may not necessarily have, the improvements or the upgrades to the speed and the service, I think is exactly the buzz that's going to be created within the community that is going to draw greater membership, right? And, whether there's credit unions listening that have indirect loan portfolios, that member had no interest in opening an account with the credit union. They wanted to buy a car. And now that they have their vehicle, now all of a sudden, surprise, you're part of this credit union, which is and should be a very welcome and pleasant surprise. It's about getting out there and then really pulling them in to become a more dedicated member and pulling in, that member to use the credit union as the primary financial institution. I think that's the goal of everything that you guys are working on. Well, let me transition to the future here, Lona. Leadership is something that I was reading off in your biography. I think that there is no greater service that you can do in your professional career than in being in the service of others. In fact, that's one of my quotes on my LinkedIn. No joke. I think that there is a lot of internal value and internal satisfaction to it. Looking forward, if you were to give some advice for credit union executives, specifically on the member experience side, what would you tell, those credit unions, or maybe even a younger Lona who's coming up in the credit union space? What would you give as advice?
Yeah. Yeah, those two different questions, but that's okay. Um, I would say, first of all, when I'm thinking of, the CFO, the CEO, the chief level, I would say the number one thing is stop leading from spreadsheets alone, right? The numbers are very critical. Gotta have the numbers, but we have to recognize that our people matter more, right? And it seems like that's common sense, right? However, that's not always the case, and you have to be very intentional about it. But if your employees aren't thriving, right? If you have high turnover and your employees are not happy, your members won't either, and that's going to show in the numbers. So one thing I would say and ask, and even to mid level, but do you have clearly defined core values that are meaningful, and are you celebrating those? And if not, I encourage you to make that a priority. I know we did that it's been some years ago. I think it was in 2020. I feel like it was around that time, but we had an executive planning session and reviewed our values, and they were fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just very generic. But I think the fact that we took the time to really to change those and making them more relevant was really pivotal to shape the culture that and who Alltru is today. We're certified great place to work for the past couple of years, so I think we're doing something right. But I do find that planning session in 2020 and really looking at those core values and really implementing that into our culture was a big change for us. So I would give that advice. If you have not done that, look at your core values.
You know what? I think everybody listening to this, I know certainly myself, I've worked at a few organizations over my professional career. There were some organizations where the mission, the values, some of the stuff was generic, right? To be the best and the baddest and the coolest and the fastest and the, generic, right? It doesn't touch the soul. It doesn't, inspire leadership. And then I've certainly worked for other organizations where the core values tend to be your North Star, your guiding, light of, if you do buy into what it is that we have, and we make it realistic, right? Not just tagline, or buzzwords, that are thrown around too much. It absolutely means that the entire team pushes in the same direction. I couldn't agree more with you. If there's one thing that you are most excited about in the future for the credit union industry, so let's close this off with something that, makes you perk your ears up and get all excited about. What's the thing you're most excited about? Or if you have more than one, share whatever you're excited with.
Right. Okay. Couple of things.
Yeah.
Definitely looking at the future, how can we redefine financial services? What might we be able to do? And especially when it comes about serving, for us, that's really close to our heart, right? Serving some of the people that have been neglected around dignity and access. How can we pair the technology and the heart together and really make financial well-being possible, for the people who've been left out for way too long? And it's, you're talking about check cashing stores and payday lenders, right? We do have a unique opportunity to leverage that passion that we have for people with our resilience. I think, I know we have declined in numbers, but I do believe we have opportunities to grow and connect further with our community, because there's a need for that. There's a hunger for that too. People are not always being served, and yeah,
Biggest differentiator that a credit union has over any financial service company that's out there is the people aspect. Yeah, it's the team.
yeah.
Anything else that you would share that you're excited about?
I am excited. We'll be moving our downtown branch here very soon. So
That's
I'm
right, you're moving
excited
into
about
St.
that.
Louis. Yeah.
It is
What
a
was what was the motivation there? Moving a branch is not easy. I hate moving my home.
Right, right. I know we actually just opened a new branch in a CDFI area, but it was brand new, from the ground up. Everything's pretty, everything is new. A remodel and a move like what we're doing is a little different. So, but we did that because unfortunately, a lot of businesses and financial institutions in the St. Louis area have moved away. And it's a shame, because we have a great number of members. We have a great number of people who live downtown and who needs us. And currently, we have a location right on Washington Street, but it's not very accessible. It's mm, the it is not easy to get parking. It's not accessible, and there's some. I'm not gonna lie. There's some crime that we're not happy with as well. But nevertheless, we are committed to staying downtown, and downtown is
Serving.
evolving. We love St. Louis City, and we wanted a location that is just as convenient as the current one, but more welcoming and visible to the underserved community. So it's about also signaling. I can't say that word, but we're invested in the city and the future of St. Louis. And so when many other institutions are leaving, we are committed. And we have many partnerships too, nonprofit organizations downtown. So we're excited about that as well. We have opened almost 23,000 I should say, savings accounts for the students in St. Louis. We have partnered with the Office of Financial Empowerment with the College Kids program. So not only do we have the youth, but we also have the families down there too. So that's what I'm very excited about.
I can't imagine a better way of ending that. If you didn't get chills or a little bit of goosebumps listening to that, Lona, I hope And I know, I fully believe that Alltru will be rewarded with that commitment to St. Louis, especially if there's change that's coming through. And maybe it's a little rough around the edges today, but St. Louis is a great city, and no doubt it will turn some of those things around. And Alltru investing in it is probably the best vote of confidence that you can give. And so be that shining light. Kudos to the entire team at Alltru for doing that. And I feel like a lot of that falls with you with member experience. Lona, thank you for joining us. I'll wrap this up. Any parting comments? I know we got to see each other. I know it's a very busy time of year. Are you going to any other conferences before the end of the year? Is there anything that you're doing personally? Is anybody going to be able to see you on the road at any point in time?
No, not this year. Not this year. But I will say, what a wonderful event. I know I cannot thank you enough and Eltropy for our partnership. We talked a little bit about that earlier, right? How important those partnerships are. And we just feel so thankful to have our tech solution with you guys. And that has been, we didn't talk about that today, but that's been a game changer for us. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the shout out, and there's a heck of a lot of Eltropians behind the scenes that work on every account for sure. We wanted to make this more about you and Alltru, but that compliment is going to be well received. I know our entire team listens to these, and so there's going to be some smiles on a few people's faces for sure with pride. Thank you again, Lona. And so for those listening, we're wrapping up our podcast here. Join us next time. Lona, thank you again. Unfortunately, you guys won't be able to see her this year, but we're going to hopefully drag her out next year to next year's leadership conference. So we'll just have to bring the rest of the listeners along with us. If not, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and post some questions. Lona, you've been always so generous with your time and responding. So hopefully where I started this podcast in saying that you are the most kind person that I think I've come across in sharing information. And I still learned new things today, even after all our prep. Hopefully that ends up being true. So I look forward to many years of seeing you guys. And one day, you know what, I would like to, at some point in time, send maybe a housewarming gift to the St. Louis branch that's out there.
That
Maybe
sounds
a little,
wonderful. Thank you for
maybe
that.
a little something from Canada, maybe some maple syrup that I'll send down there. And you guys can have some breakfast on me. How about
Sounds
that?
great. I'll make the waffles.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and join us next time for the Eltropy Exchange. My name is Michael Pupil. Thank you very much for joining. Stay empowered, stay connected, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Eltropy Exchange podcast. For more insights and resources, visit us at eltropy.com. We'll see you next time.